Okay, now I'd like to welcome to the stage Dan Varner, President and CEO of Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit, a Pahara Fellow, and a moderator. What an accomplished guy. Let's give Dan a hand.
Hey, hey, good people. Good evening. How we doing? Good. Um, so as you just heard, I'm not an Ascend Fellow. I'm a Pahara Fellow. Um, yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. But I love to make a contribution. It's one of my core values, one of my 7 core values, and I get to do that as a moderator. So I love, love, love to moderate. I'm thrilled to return to the Ascend community as a moderator in order to make a contribution to all of you. Here's the thing. For 30 years, my professional mission in Detroit has been to make Detroit a great place to be a kid and raise a family. Yeah, I've been talking about that for 30 years, making Detroit a great place to be a kid and raise a family. And so when I spoke to Ann Mosley earlier this year, she shared with me this thought, hey, I'm gonna do this thing. I want us to take the Ascend thing to the next level. And when she shared that vision with me, I was moved. I was like, wow, that is powerful, right? Love that vision. And I love that vision because I love the North Star that we all share, right? Brighter futures for all children and all families. So it's fitting tonight that I get to introduce you to another visionary. It's my privilege to introduce Ann Welsh McNulty, member of the Aspen Institute Board of Trustees and co-founder and president of the John P. and Ann Welsh McNulty Foundation. She spent over 30 years as a leader in the financial world, and she's paired that success with a powerful philanthropic mission to elevate bold, values-driven leadership around the globe. Through the McNulty Foundation, as you all know, she's launched and supported transformative initiatives, including the McNulty Prize, and you heard Dan Porterfield yesterday say, these Ascend Fellows keep winning the McNulty Prize, right? That's right. Which is awarded in partnership with the Aspen Institute, which honors leaders with moral courage, bold vision, and lasting impact. Several of those leaders have been Ascend Fellows, as I just said, a testament to the power of this community of which you are all a part, and to your leadership. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ann Welsh McNulty.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for your inspiring work. So, as Dan said, I'm Ann Welsh McNulty, and it's a real joy to be here in Aspen with all of you. This past month, we lost a good friend of the Institute, Andrew McCoy, who was one of the founders of B-Lab. He was an Aspen Fellow, and he was a McNulty Prize winner. And before he passed away, he shared this reflection. What Andrew said was, most of the meaning in my life comes from relationships. When you try to address some of the big, overwhelming problems that exist in the world, the people that you come in contact with, your fellow travelers, are so inspiring, and in the end, that's what gives life meaning. So this resonated with me, and I'm sure it does with you as well. It's leaders like Andrew and like all of you in this community here in Aspen where we can find the courage and the strength to persevere and to find hope. These kind of relationships are the driving force behind our work at the McNulty Foundation. And our mission, as Dan said, is to lift up courageous leaders from around the world who are bringing breakthrough solutions to their communities. So in our nearly 20 years of giving the McNulty Prize, we have learned that the most successful leaders don't assume that they have the solutions. Instead, they look to the communities and the individuals that they serve. And we learned this, of course, from our Aspen Ascend Fellow, Aisha Nyandoro. So as many of you know, after years of delivering programs to single mothers in public housing in Jacksonville, Mississippi, Aisha noticed that families were still not moving out of public housing, despite all of their efforts. And every time she asked the mothers what they really needed, the answer was simple. They said, cash. Cash is what we need. And that led Aisha to answer the question, well, what if anti-poverty programs were designed around trust? Instead of making people prove they deserve assistance or defining how they should get assistance, she launched the Magnolia Mothers Trust, giving these mothers $1,000 a month for a year. The results were so dramatic. Not only were the moms able to pay bills on time or buy food or fix a broken down car, but they were also able to achieve getting to move themselves out of public housing. And instead of taking the 7 to 10 years that it often takes people to get themselves out of public housing, these families became independent within the first 6 months after Aisha's program of the 1 year, $1,000 a month. It's really amazing. Sorry, pages are sticking together. Okay. Aisha's work has sparked a movement around guaranteed income in the U.S. and demonstrating that sometimes trust is the most effective way to move people out of poverty. And so from our 60 McNulty Prize laureates around the world, we've also learned that durable change often comes from leaders who see their role as spurring communities to create change. And of course, we see this in another Ascend Fellow and the newest winner of the McNulty Prize, which was announced just last week, Lila Zayden. Now, Lila was not here in person last week because, as many of you may know, she just gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. A very good excuse for not coming to Aspen. But she did do a film, of course, announcing what she would have said if she was here. So an amazing person. And Layla's stepping into an arena that most people are walking away from right now. She is uniting young lawmakers across the country through work through her venture, Future Caucus. And instead of taking a partisan approach to policy making, she takes a generational approach. As we were talking about this at our table, the two-generation effective approach of Ascend. So as a result, she gets generational lawmakers and helps them to collaborate across the aisle. And as a result, they're much more effectively stirring their constituency. And a recent success that Future Caucus had was to bring together lawmakers in Arkansas from both sides, Democrats and Republicans, to support historic maternal health legislation, to expand legal protections for various forms of prenatal and postpartum care. So really a good example of what Future Caucus does and very meaningful. So I have to say that the Ascend Fellowship is really one of the great success stories of Aspen. Thanks to the determination and leadership of Ann Mosley. At the Aspen Institute, we talk a lot about leadership, but it's not just about leadership, it's about the fierce belief in the community and in this community. So we all know that the journey to change can be slow. It can be personally demanding, and it can be very isolating for the individual leaders. So it is so important that you all come together in a forum like this, and not just to learn from one another and think about ways to work together, but to actively support each other on this journey as fellow travelers. So this is how we can try to create the kind of impact that is more than any one of us can do on our own. So thank you very much and enjoy this forum. Thank you.
Aspen family, please welcome John Simpkins, Senior Moderator, Liberty Fellow, and former President and CEO of MDC.
Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to Ann McNulty, who has been unwavering in her belief in the power of bold, values-driven leadership. This community feels like home to me. I've been coming here for over 20 years. My son spent many, many summers here. It's probably appropriate that I'm sitting next to the mayor tonight. And it's great to be back. It's great to be back as a moderator among all of you. And Ann Mosley promises that I'm now a part of the family, so I hope that I get to come back. Ascend's North Star, this notion of well-being and prosperity for families deeply resonates with me. I just left an organization called MDC. MDC is based on its mission, in which we look to equip people to live lives of meaning through work that builds dignity and to find that dignity fully realized in community. That's a vision that not only aligns with my values, but it has also shaped my work at home and abroad. And it was in that early work abroad that I came to know Neo before I met Neo. Having taught at his alma mater in South Africa over 30 years ago. Even then, his peers adored him for his immense talent and deep kindness. Imagine this, teenagers who value kindness in another teenager. This man is special. So when I met him in the early 2000s, I said, we should be friends. And that we have become, to my great delight. Neo's ideas, his artistry, his empathetic yet pragmatic view of our human condition hold the room in a way that few can. What Robert Hayden said of Frederick Douglass is just as true of Neo's work. Visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. And I predict we will remember this evening. It's an honor to welcome to the stage Neo Muyanga, composer, philosopher, installation artist, and musician, whose work calls us to create a world that does not yet exist, but that we so desperately need to make a reality. Welcome, my friend.
I should have thought before how I was going to do this. Thank you, John. It's very special to be here, and I want to thank all of you for being so welcoming after you found out that I'm not an Aspen Fellow either. But I am in the family. I'm in the Africa Leadership Initiative and the AGLN. And it was through these channels that I was fortunate enough to meet Ann Mosley last October in Cape Town. And we started a conversation which is continuing really tonight. And Ann, you and your colleagues have been so kind and generous in how you've got me and my friend and colleague, my sister Tina Meni here, who you'll meet shortly. What I thought I would do tonight is reflect with you, but through the sonic lens, which is my language. And I want to reflect through some of the reading we are doing this week. So I'm going to meander through a series of interjections that I've made. It's a project that I've had ongoing over the past decade. And I've called it revolting music. And it's in two senses. Revolting in the sense of this is the music in South Africa of our, we call it uprising. These are collective objects of public good. These are songs that are very explosive, very dangerous. We treat them with much respect. But they're also revolting to people who come from outside of this cathedral of activism. They are revolting because they imply perhaps revolution and change. These are the soundtrack words and themes of our change in South Africa. But what I'll do tonight is I'm going to play them not as revolutionary songs. I want to play them as love songs, which is anathema to the South African practice. So when I do this at home, people at once feel joyed because they know the references I'm making, but very irritated that I've taken away the opportunity for the whole room to collectively sing. And I'm doing this not to irritate us. I'm doing it to help us think through why we are still today singing some of the same material that was composed against apartheid, but we're performing it today with urgency. I think that tells us something. The songs and how we perform them tell us something about who we are today. So I'm going to perform a little bit of that repertoire to you. You may recognize some of the iconic names, and it's a lot of reflection on what brought South Africa to where we are today. So I'll take you on a short meander of some of these in sequential lining. Umandela uthayihlome, Umandela uthayihlome ihlome ihlasela, siyaya ngomkhonto wesizwe elusaka, uSisulu uthayihlome, uSisulu uthayihlome hlasela, siyaya ngomkhonto wesizwe elusaka, siyaya ngomkhonto wesizwe. This is a tune that was written by Mongezi Feza, who was a member of a band, a jazz band, the first instrumental jazz band in the 60s. And they played instrumental music, so it couldn't be banned. Mongezi Feza died in exile in London. Tsohle di entswe ke wena Modimo reboka we tsohle di entswe ke wena Modimo reboka, Modimo reboka wena, reboka tsohle tsohle di entswe ke wena modimo reboka ubantu biko uthayihlome ubantu biko uthayihlome hlase siyaya ngomkhonto wesizwe elusaka uWinnie Mandela uthayihlome uAlbertine uthayihlome hlase siyaya ngomkhonto wesizwe elusaka siyaya Gomkonto la le sono di na ka me dubi di poro siaya Gomkonto wesizwe elusaka naledi kelirumulam musowarona watseba kinnete khabare ha di kgetho tsa bona ba tshwere tlou ka lenala fela ba iqapela maka ba tseba harai tu da mame di sisa dikolo tsa rona dia poka phapusi di tletse masapo a thuto mekoko e tshaba hore hlodi ya hoseng re tsoswa ke boima ba pogoto tsarona ka pogoto tsarona ri kapela maka ra tseba monate o iketsetsa rona a ke kitu te ki ketse tipa ki ponse ka bohale le fifi lena le ra da ba 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 Umake ba uta ihlome Umake ba uta ihlome hlase Siya Gomkonto wesizwe elusaka Umaxeke ota ihlome Umaxeke ota ihloma ta ihlome hlase Siyaya Gomkonto wesizwe elusaka Siya ngomkhonto Siya Zale thonon ha 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 dina kami dupi di paro Siya Umkhonto wesizwe elusaka Thank you. I'd like to introduce you now to my sister Tina Meni, who's a wonderful dramatic soprano. She's an opera singer, and we work very closely together very often. Please come and join me. We'll perform you an aria from an opera I wrote a number of years ago now, based on a book by Zeksimdar called The Heart of Redness. And the red people are considered to be the rural people who live on the east coast of South Africa. They were among the first peoples to be colonized, and some of them are the poorest people in the country. As a result of this, they're also the first people to have gained access to missionary schooling. So choral formations have come mainly from this particular experience, where they came from a two-part harmony singing style of either war music or praise poetry into this four-part harmony. Abdullah Ibrahim says very famously, we are the only country in the world to win a revolution in four-part harmony. So it's this kind of material he's talking about. And this song, Kukezwa, who's the role, is a character that is split in two. She has two lives that are 200 years apart. The first Kukezwa was part of the cattle killing story of Unongauze. And the second is a much more argumentative younger woman who says, we know how we were duped in the past and will not be taken for granted anymore. So this song represents a very violent bit of history in South Africa, where a very, very famous chieftain was murdered by the British colonial forces. And this is Kukezwa, who was married to this man who was the child, one of the sons of this chieftain, who reflects on how the family became split. And one side of the family was accused of committing revolution, and the other was believed to be involved in witchcraft. And these were tactics of divide and conquer. So it's a song about how Kukezwa refuses to play the doublespeak and wants to unite this tradition.
One was accused of abusing Ubuti. Though the twins had been brought up to honor one tradition, they were set apart. Twin and his wife were forced to account.
Thought to be unclean.
They tried to protest.
No one heard.
Fear and doubt and evil have arrived inside the home of our King.
Evil Ubuti. Evil Ubuti.
Letsa Sohoyaka Maso Aduta Boya Kiatiretswa Kingwana Mwana Ki hate tu fatiki Letswalo
That is his name. He was lord of many people, ruler of the great palace of Usahil. He bore 2 sons, twin and twin, watch their father die. He was assailed by the British men of war.
British men of war.
Though the twins have been brought up to honor all people, they sought revenge. They sought to appease their ones who lie
Beneath the ground.
ancestor, Lord of all people. Inside the home I was born. My name is Tugiswa, child of the ancestor whose head was severed to serve a
She's the
king.
child born you with the spirit.
I am the chosen one. I dare to thread and play a great healer's lay, waiting for judgment day.
Waiting for judgment day.
I am daughter of Tosa,
salvation.
granddaughter of the Koi, leader of the angry.
The angry, we wait for judgment day.
Many years have passed. I've been waiting here behind Usundu bush. This is where we saw them rest. The strangers in the mist, elders of Koloha, dearly departed king. Matters of our past, we weep for you. There was a man, his name was our leader. We attend the river to dance a ritual. Our dance of mourning. This is how we remember you. Your life was slain by the British men of war.
British men of war.
In our hearts you remain. We honor you and all our elders. May you rest in peace.
Thank you.
Ascend family, please welcome Mia Birdsong, founding executive director of Next River. Laura Huerta-Maigas, former deputy director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Ann Mosley, founder and executive director of Ascend at the Aspen Institute. And composer and Africa Leadership Fellow, Neo Muyanga, to the stage.
Wow. It's a little hard to follow that, huh? I think we just experienced what Linda Hogan said of to enter stone, be like water. So we can please give another round of applause to Neo and Tina. Thank you. You know, I think, Tina, when you came, when we were sort of visiting, and you're the only person, the two of you, I think, are the only people who've traveled to Aspen and never complained about the travel. Just kind of saying, friends. They was like, I thought a lot, I was reflecting. I was like, okay, you're Tiana's best friend. But I, you know, when Tina, you said, part of being here, this landscape makes me think of home. And I also really want to thank John Simpkins and Dan Varner for their comments, but for who they are. As we say, once an ascender, always an ascender. You couldn't shake us if you tried. And Anne, thank you for being here and for always seeing with all the many parts of the Aspen Institute, for seeing Ascend. And the incredible fellows from Aisha to Joe Jones in Baltimore, Jessica Ulrich, and the Indigenous wisdom work she's doing, and Layla Zidane. Thank you for seeing Ascend. So we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to set up a little bit, and then I'm just going to ask a few questions. But I want to ground us a little bit, because this topic, I sort of had the headline of in the company of giants. And when we think about in company of giants, we've talked about that, and we've talked about the natural forces, the glaciers that have shaped the valleys that we're in, the forces that are gravitational and sometimes out of our control, and how do we lean in, and how do we know when we lean out, but how do we move forward together? And I was thinking about a quote that said, so you think about, like, what's a giant? But if a person continues to see giants, it means they're still looking at the world through the eyes of children. And we've talked a lot about what's hard, but even we think about unstoppable, and that toddler, and my friend Chidi, who I just keep thinking about, her two little ones, but that a toddler has no abandon just when they're starting to walk and they just zoom across the room, as well as the conviction that you all hold in your hearts. And that's what binds us and tethers us together as family. And so, you know, what we just experienced here was not a performance. This was really an invitation to feel much more deeply, to remember much more fully, and to imagine much more freely. And Neo, you and Tina gave us a soundscape to add to the landscape, as well as to the dialogue and the strategy sessions. And we thank you for that. Because when we listen to music, it lets us awaken our full selves. It allows us to hold joy and grief in the same breath. And it helps us to remember both what we've lost, what we've given, but also what's yet to be built. What's our shared house of tomorrow? And so music crosses boundaries, it carries memories, it reminds us of who we are, it keeps us tethered together through the conflict, the clarity, and the collective action. And it connects to science. And it confirms, when we think about science, confirms what we know in our bones, when we think about different forms of wisdom. Because when we sing together, we regulate our breathing, our nervous system's calm, our stress reduces, and it unlocks oxytocin, which is a hormone that actually fosters connection. And so when we sing together, we remember that we are tethered together. And so we've had the conversations even from last night, I think it was, how far we've gone, that we are like-hearted, but differently minded, and that is our strength. And when we're not doing that here at home in our country, let us think how much we have to learn, how much more is ahead. And if someone isn't offering that vision or the path forward, let us together explore and dream with huge vigor and rigor to fill that void. Because no one's coming to do it for us, but who else is better to do it than all of you? So for this conversation, these are 3 literally global giants. They're also personal giants. And we got to see Neo's magic on stage as a composer, as a musician, as a man who cracks the heart open and makes a soundscape. But he's also a leader who is bridging and building communities and changing the way arts and culture and communities being built around the world, and also throughout from Joburg and also Cape Town. We have Mia Birdsong, who is an author, a futurist, a huge dreamer, and a rejection of anything that is going to put anybody, and certainly her, in any box. Mia is thinking about what are daily practices, and also a really bold vision that isn't about policy or legislation. It is really about love and liberation. So Mia, great to have you. And then Laura Huertamigas, cultural anthropologist, one of the most curious and open and creative bridge-building people I know, came through the Children's Museum Association, who is passionate about what art and community can look like. She's still quasi being paid as the deputy director of the Institute for Museums, Library, and Science Services for the US government. But she has served as literally the US government's curator, visionary for the museums and culture, and with colleagues also in library. And she has thought about this work so much when we think about community and trust. So that's it from me. And I really want to start first with maybe Neo, then Mia, then Laura, to just share kind of the vision of your work, where your work is breaking through, what's shaping it, but just bring your vision into this room.
Thank you, Anne. Again, it's so good to be here and to be sharing this moment with the two of you. We met over lunch, and I felt very much a kindred spirit, so thank you very much. My work is twofold. As a composer, I work a lot with communities around choral practice. Because our country is a choral country, there's a cliche about South Africans sing for whatever excuse. It's actually true. We have a song for everything and every moment. But what it also gives is a sense of connection to people who have been marginalized historically. And it's a way that people are able to share their pains, their joys, their hopes. And so I work a lot as a researcher to try and also understand what the songs we make tell us about ourselves, and how the songs that we keep regurgitating and repeating also tell us maybe something troubling about the rut, the stuckness that we are in. I was saying earlier, I work from the premise of crisis. South Africa is generally always a country in crisis. Some of us half jokingly call South Africa a movie. All kinds of things are happening all the time that one could never invent. The scripts being written in real life are just unimaginable. I note a few knowing nods and laughs because I've been hearing similar things with some of the fellows while we've been here. And the other part of my work is leading an entity called the Center for the Less Good Idea in Johannesburg. It's a center of multidisciplinary experimental arts in a country and a city that isn't used to having very extreme avant-gardism practiced. People will say, we don't have the money for that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's considered elitist and it's considered a luxury. And in fact, we do it in a part of Johannesburg that some consider derelict, abandoned, some even call it post-apocalyptic. And we do it to bring light to the fact that people still continue to live in these communities. And not only that, they flourish in their own terms by making art, by making connections, by bringing up families under duress, granted. But often their survival strategy is premised on depending on one another. The trust between neighbors, the trust between relatives and family. All of these things are things that I've been hearing reflected, particularly in the seminar this morning and at various points around the coffee station and also chatting to the two of you over lunch with Anne. So my work is about these connection points. And then when I sit as a composer with pen and paper and I write out what I think is an interesting story to tell, I'm doing it through these lenses and trying to fuse them and trying to understand what it is we want as a next step. I said to you earlier today, the purpose for me is also trying to avoid giving out a grand narrative. The time for that is no longer, we feel. The stories are about how do we help each other move from today into tomorrow with dignity, with care and compassion. And then we improvise tomorrow what becomes the question for the following day. So I'll pause it there.
So much of that resonates with my work. So one of the giants that I consider in my lineage is Harriet Tubman. And years before the end of chattel slavery in the United States, she said, "My people are free." And despite the conditions that she existed in, she was proclaiming this for herself and her people. She believed it. She spoke it in the present tense. She embodied it. She traveled to the South and rejected the idea that the laws of men would determine her experience of freedom. And she achieved it. She brought dozens and dozens of people from the South north, and she led rebellions against the Confederacy. She bent her reality toward the future that we're still trying to achieve. How we live in the present determines our future. And our practices, how we relate to each other, the stories we tell, the way in which we make meaning are the culture that we have. And culture is a practice. Culture is a living thing that we do with each other all the time. So in the work that I do, we think about what culture are we practicing and what future are we enabling? the freedom that America practices is one of toxic individualism. It holds up the lie of independence. And it is a freedom that is kind of like a prize that a few of us can win at the expense of everyone else. And I'm not interested in that. And it is a barrier to the just, generous, caring world that we want to create. It stands in the way constantly. It is the soil in which we are constantly planting efforts that ultimately die because it's toxic soil. And we can remediate that soil by practicing a different kind of freedom. We call it interconnected freedom, which frankly I don't like from a branding perspective, but that's what we got right now. And it's one that not only recognizes but deeply embraces our inherent interdependence. It's one that takes seriously what Fannie Lou Hamer said when she said, nobody's free, right? Like, it's what my friend Eric Liu says, that we're all better off when we're all better off. And that is a freedom that we know in our bones. It is a freedom that connects to what it fundamentally means to be a person, because all life is interdependent and humans are particularly interdependent. So the work we're doing is about uncovering where interconnected freedom already exists, because all of us know what it is and all of us are practicing it in some ways. We might not call it freedom, but that's what it is. We are looking for the fertile ground where interconnected freedom can be fostered and tended to. And we're trying to understand what the barriers are, both the external systemic barriers, but also our internal barriers, the ways in which we have metabolized America's version of freedom, and the practices that help us excavate that version of freedom from us so that we can be with each other. And we really think of this work not as just a nice thing to have or like an addition, but they are survival skills. And when I think about the collapse that we're in and the way that collapses go, which is they get worse, I'm clear that the skills that we need are about being in relationship with each other. They're skills of mutuality and solidarity and an abundance, as we discussed in our group today, an abundance that also understands enoughness. That is the abundance where there is enough for all of us. So that's what we're working on. We're just trying to change what everybody believes freedom is. Just a little thing.
I joked with people that I was just going to say, yeah. It's like going to be late, last. Thank you. I think I want to lean into the honor that I had of being able to steward our collective investment. As a federal funder, this was our money that we were investing at the Institute of Museum and Library Services and in the nation's cultural spaces. And one of the things that was so boring but so critical that was part of my work there was actually being able to articulate and illustrate the great investment and care and love that this nation has for community and its own stories and all of those stories. And so was able to lead the first ever research effort to really, it sounds boring, do a count of the nation's museums that are open to the public. We had them for public libraries. We have over 17,000 public library branches, and almost 20,000 museums. More than 80% of the nation's museum-like cultural institutions are 501c3s. They're not government funded. So what that means is that they're community driven. And so we invest every day in those relationship spaces. And it's a thing we take for granted even when we don't use them. And so as we think about why is it important to experience, Neo, what you brought us, and think about relationship, it always happens in place, whether we're in place by ourselves or with others, or I know Shepard Fairey was just here doing a mural in our public spaces and public art. We're creating the stories of ourselves that help us belong and also memorialize the way in which we survive not belonging. And so as for me, that's so critical in this equity work because it's so human. And we create houses to hold our feelings and emotions, and we do culture every moment as humans. That's part of who we are as beings and mammals. And Mia and I were talking about Maslow's hierarchy and our feelings about that. And there's this notion that
stolen and garbage.
that art and culture are enrichment. And you cannot tell me from what we heard today that art and creativity is not a core survival skill. And so I invite us to think about that it's not just enjoyment, but it's what allows us to touch that when times are the toughest, and how it creates connection and relationship. So that's the exciting part and the honor of what we were doing with our investment. That was our investment together as a nation.
When we were talking at lunch, like one of the things I thought about afterward was also just that in what you were saying, Laura, and what you do in your work is also this way in which like culture determines what we think is possible.
Totally.
Right? And what we think our constraints are. And there's this responsibility that we have to practice a culture that expands our imaginations, right? And kind of reclaims our attention and our ability to imagine possible futures that are well beyond the limitations of our current conditions.
Well, and I think kind of going a theme about like what's above the water and what's below the surface. And Laura, when you said, arts and culture is a critical skill to our survival, arts and culture is sort of tethered to our survival. And I'm, there's so much each of you could share, but the work you did, not just like as the investor, but you during the pandemic or any other part you want to say from past or forward for each of you, how in some of your work, some examples or practices where you've used arts and culture to build trust, new civic muscle, humanity?
Thank you. And I will say that maybe the only claim I can make is as an enabler in many ways. There are thousands of colleagues who were doing the work. But during the pandemic was really critical when we think about, is it a concert? Is it the things that creative types tend to want to do, or how leaders want to use art and culture as a bit of a pacifier? And what was incredible was when you asked our leaders, and I'm looking right here at Helona Norton Westbrook. You should stand up. Who was an IMLS board member along with Depeche, and leader of a museum who looked around at what their community needed, and sometimes it was just their building. Sometimes it was a beautiful building with beautiful things that people just needed to come to because the places they were stuck were horrible and scary and stressful. And we saw mental health services being delivered in libraries and museums and parks and places that were smart, where parents could come and get vaccines in a children's museum that had places for kids to play and to destigmatize that, and how we're seeing those relationships continue past crisis, because that crisis opened up possibilities of we don't have to do this alone, and our partnership is better, and we are real beings in space that need connection. So
one of the practices that I have done many times with a group of Black women is a public grieving practice. So of the multiple, we've done all these public altars when a Black woman is murdered by the police. So we do a public altar, we bring whatever feels resonant, we set it up in a place that people can visit. And one of the last ones we did, there's the altar setting up and kind of that creation, and then we kind of do a circle where people are allowed to just say what they need to say. And I saw all this tension, like, in people's bodies. So at the end of the circle, I just said, if anybody wants a hug, like, I got you. And I didn't really know, I was just like, that felt like the offering that needed to happen. And I had a line of like 10 people, and they came up to me, and I held them, and I could feel their bodies just like let go. And they just started crying. And afterward, I was just like, oh, like, we need to do this all the time. Like, all of you we're all holding this unprocessed grief and trauma. And to have each other be able to be a literal place of holding for us, so that we can, like, sink into someone else's arms and just let go, was profound. So I'm just gonna say this. If any of y'all need a hug, and I have very good boundaries, so if I'm not feeling it, I'll tell you no. And I'm saying that, I know that's funny, but I'm saying that just so that you don't have to worry about imposing upon me. You can trust that I will say not right now if I don't have that capacity, but I have a lot of capacity right now. So if any of y'all need a hug while we're here, please come to see me.
And I know we're going to be getting ready to wrap up. And Nea, I really want you to take the time to share what you want to share from your work in terms of the practices in this piece, because it is such a gift, the travel you have made, to come and get a hug from Mia.
I'll call on you. Well, let me start by what happened today. I participated in an experiment here today with some of you gathered here. There you are. Of building trust among strangers. So we signed up to a group. Not many people knew each other, I don't think, about singing, the act of singing with strangers and what that does. Some people in the group said they're not very comfortable as singers. They don't feel particularly aligned to the identifier singer. And some said, in fact, I am very much a singer, and they expressed a tradition they belong to. But ultimately, singing, I think, is one of those acts that we have as humans which commit us to just stepping in. It's a very low threshold act to some degree, because you come as you are. And the expectation is whatever voice you have, particularly when it's a collective singing exercise, whatever voice you have is the right one. And I started off by saying singing in choir has a lot more to do with listening than actually making a sound. It starts with you listening to the people on either side of you, who's in front of you, who's behind you, and leaning on each other, is really the core of what the practice is. And so I think of it as a techne. It's a technology for building trust and making community spontaneously, actually. And so I use this practice quite a lot. And I'll go back to this idea of four-part harmony, right? These four voices which are representative of the diversity in the human race, right? Some people have very high voices, some have mid-high voices, some have middle voices, and some very low voices. It's all of these voices coming together that create a sense of a choir that sounds good. And I didn't tell all of you who are participating today, but I've run a project continuously over a number of years. I've started many, many choirs over the last 2 decades. Some of those choirs I started with the invitation to people who were told they can't sing and should never make a sound. And in one of these projects, which is actually my Ali project, I belong to the Africa Leadership Initiative. One of my first projects, we called them projects at that point, was to bring people together who were told never to make a sound because they don't sound good. And my aim was to understand if you commit to this act of singing as a practice, which means you come to it, you practice it almost daily or regularly, what does it offer up? And what eventually happened is the choir of non-singers started sounding so good, we ended up being invited to perform, to open events, usually to do with activism. And it was a proof, actually, that this form of singing can be available to all of us. It's trusting your colleagues, but it's also trusting yourself to make that step. And so in that sense, it's one little anecdote that I can share about this particular practice.
So beautiful. Looking forward to some more singing and song making coming forward. And want to give time for people to have informal time together, but one of the things that's been on the Ascend journey, I think you'll probably recognize this, sort of, we've talked a lot about the greatest distance between two people can be a story. And I think one of the shifts that I'm experiencing is not only the greatest distance, but the way to warm a heart or crack a hardened mind is the power of the song. And I think we can get very analytical. We can get very focused. But when I think about Neo saying, the importance to be in a choir is the ability to listen and still to discover. And the conditions aren't always set for that, but the music is in this room. And so when you think about all the dimensions of who everyone in this room is, this is so much more than the next house. This is a way to be on the path to tomorrow together. So please join me in just giving our love to these giants, Mia Birdsong.
Before we go there, Lori reminded us, that's right, that we are meant to share a song, which is where I thought you were going.
I was going to do it, but they had the little thing here, so I didn't know which Lori wanted.
We're going to do it anyway.
So, hey, I was trying to, wait, where's Lori? Where's Lori? Okay, I want to get one more time, because thank you, Mia. She's going to ask the last question. But I just want to go on record, and anybody who knows me an inch, I am being the most well-behaved throughout this entire time, following the rules of the team. Thank you.
I am following Lori's rule. She reminded Laura and I that we each are going to share a song that is helping us get through this moment, and then you all are going to put in a song that, I don't know, that's how you have to say it, right? A song that is helping to get you through this moment, and then we're going to have a little playlist of like inspirational music for all of us, all right?
Yes.
So I'll go first because I'm talking. There's this Gil Scott-Heron song called I Think I'll Call It Morning. Oh, y'all, it's so good. No, I will not. You will look it up in a second and then you'll listen to it. All right, that's my song. All right, someone else can go while you're thinking because we do have time.
Yeah. Oh, you want to?
Do you have one?
I do have one.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was thinking about Tiana and walk-up music, and I hope you all have walk-up music when you're gonna do. Okay, so one of my walk-up songs to put it on is "Hold On" by the Alabama Shakes, which says, "Come on, Brittany, you gotta get on up." So that is the song. That was my walk-on song, prep song today.
All right, I'm going to get that, and Nea's going to close this out. So my walk-up song was actually George Benson, who I grew up in Pittsburgh in East Liberty, where my mom, who I'll be going from here for her memorial service, built the first special needs school in East Liberty. For it's all that, and I used to later in life be a kid sitting in the corners, but then later in high school I'd sort of sneak into the bars underage and got to see George Benson before he became famous and turn your love. So turn your love around. So Neo, turn our love light on and off and send us for the evening. But
the song that keeps coming back to my head, I'm sorry I can't remember the band, but I'm sure you all know it. It's like a funk song. War. Huh. War
by war.
Good for absolutely nothing.
Say it again.
And I love that. I love that particularly for this moment, because we're still making wars that we know are not good for anybody.
Thank you.
So I feel like shouting that out loud.
all right, give it up for Mia, Laura, and Neo, and everybody here. Woo!